What is the deadliest job on the planet? A deep-sea welder? A high-altitude special operations soldier? No. Statistically, the position with the highest rate of mortality and disappearance is the number 2 of the Chinese Communist Party. A figure who was discussing the nation's fate yesterday disappears without a trace from all official media this morning. Their empty seat at official functions is covered by digital noise, and their name becomes a forbidden word in search engines. This is not a simple political purge. It is a sophisticated systemic immune response, activated by a one-man dictatorship to maintain itself, the most brutal algorithm of modern power structures. Today, Military Explained dives deep into the thick fog of Zhongnanhai. Specifically, we decode the massive crack recently detected at the heart of power, the disappearance of Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia, Xi Jinping's closest ally and a titan of the military, and the algorithm of his purge. Figures who once assisted President Xi Jinping at the pinnacle of power are vanishing one by one. From Qin Gang in foreign affairs, to Li Shangfu in defense, and even the leadership of the rocket force. However, all these purges may have been a mere prelude to a single, massive target. Zhang Youxia, Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission. Zhang was not a simple aide. He was Xi's only equal within the military, sharing blood brother roots that trace back to their fathers, who were comrades in arms. But in a one-man dictatorship, equals cannot exist. There is only absolute obedience. The process of Zhang Youxia's purge follows a far more advanced path of systemic isolation than the traditional methods we once knew. The first stage of Zhang Youxia's purge is systemic denervation. As the godfather of the princelings within the military, Zhang possessed a vast network of influence. Instead of striking the main body directly, Xi began by removing the hands and feet that supported Zhang. The recent data on massive purges within the rocket force and the equipment development department is evidence of this. Key generals, including Li Shangfu, Zhang's cherished protégés, were the first to vanish into digital noise under corruption charges. This was a process of pruning the roots of the great tree that was Zhang Youxia, turning him into an isolated island within the CMC system. The second stage is functional neutralization. As of 2026, the command structure of the Chinese military is undergoing a murky transformation. Signs are emerging that the traditional command authority once held by Zhang is being redistributed to newly established special committees or working groups directly under Xi's control. Power flow charts show that data streams, once heading toward Zhang's node, are being rerouted and concentrated into the leader's direct nodes. While his seat at official ceremonies was preserved for a time, the actual authority to command exercised from that seat had already been deleted. This is the essence of the Chinese-style invisible man purge, killing without actually killing. However, now that Zhang himself is being erased, even that facade no longer remains. The third stage is psychological sequestration and self-deletion. Publicly arresting a figure of such high prestige within the military would have dealt a massive shock to the entire system. Therefore, Xi likely intended to utilize frames such as health reasons or long-term recuperation. Zhang began to disappear from major military exercise sites, and official media camera angles began to skillfully avoid him. Looking at visualized media frequency charts, his exposure levels plummeted below critical thresholds. The system likely pre-processed him into a state where he exists, but is not present, waiting for him to be completely erased from public memory. However, the current political situation in China is moving far more urgently. Why then did Xi Jinping have to erase even Zhang Youxia, his most powerful shield? Because in 2026, as tensions in the Taiwan Strait reach a boiling point, what Xi needs is not a veteran strategist, but a perfect remote control. Zhang is an individual with rich combat experience and an independent voice within the military. He was the only person capable of questioning the leader's decisions in the extreme circumstances of war. That is exactly why Xi regarded Zhang as a fatal error in the system. For a dictator facing a war for hegemony, the greatest fear is not the enemy army, but the comrade behind his back who can say, "That is wrong." Ultimately, Zhang Youxia's purge is an event declaring the final end of bloodline-based ties within the CCP. Now, no friends capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with Xi remain in Zhongnanhai. Only machines waiting for orders are left. However, this brutal purge algorithm portends fatal side effects. A military whose intelligence is paralyzed and whose flexible field judgment has become impossible is nothing more than a massive hunk of iron. The software called Fear, which has filled the void left by Zhang, could trigger unexpected bugs on the battlefield and collapse the entire system. Now, the most critical watchpoint we must focus on is the impact this purge will have on future global security, particularly the Taiwan Strait. Military experts predict that purges under a dictatorship will increase the probability of war. Why? Let's decode this through three key indicators. First, the single intelligence trap. The CMC, now devoid of veteran generals like Zhang, has become a massive confirmation bias system, reflecting only Xi Jinping's will. This is a stage where complex variables and unfavorable data from the battlefield are not reported, only optimistic views of victory. This perfectly aligns with the distortion of information seen when Russia invaded Ukraine. When the command's intelligence is unified into a single point, the extreme choice of an invasion can be decided far more easily. Second, the external transfer of internal discontent. An acceleration of purges means that internal cohesion has weakened. China's economic indicators in 2026 are heading toward a tipping point. The most effective card a dictator can play to relieve massive internal pressure is external war. A Taiwan invasion would serve as a means to silence internal criticism through the powerful opium of nationalism and forcibly integrate bureaucrats, paralyzed by the fear of purges, into the massive mechanism of a war footing. Third, technical paralysis and field confusion. The core of modern warfare is data-driven, flexible command and control. However, a military forged by purges severely limits the autonomy of field commanders. During a Taiwan invasion, a command center that only looks to Beijing's whims, while the battlefield situation changes by the second, will show a fatal response delay when faced with the multidimensional responses of the US Navy and its allies. This is an act of voluntarily surrendering the 0.1% technical difference that determines victory or defeat in war. We are witnessing a geopolitical earthquake across the entire Eurasian continent, transcending simple political news. The purge of China's number 2 is not just internal housekeeping. It is a chilling warning to the global liberal bloc. China is now transforming from a predictable nation into a massive, unpredictable variable, moving according to the will of one man. The United States and its allies must now prepare a strategy on a different level. The opponent is a person, not a system. Real-time monitoring of Xi Jinping's psychological state and the degree of information distortion within Zhongnanhai has become an as important security task as the deployment of aircraft carrier strike groups. The world post-2026 will be an era of decoding, not an era of trust. For South Korea, this is not someone else's problem. The tension above the 38th parallel and the waves of the Taiwan Strait are a single, interconnected data stream. The change in command structure caused by the purge of the Chinese military will inevitably affect North Korea's strategic provocations as well. We now stand at a point where we must view the entire global supply chain and security landscape three-dimensionally. beyond just the Korean peninsula. This is the result of today's decoding. In the power structure of the Chinese Communist Party, number 2 is an undefined value. The leader tries to replicate himself, but the moment the duplicate becomes clearer than the original, he hits the delete button. The Chinese military in 2026, with even its last Titan Zhang Youxia deleted, now stands in a state that appears most powerful yet is simultaneously most fragile. Under the leader's sun, no shadow is permitted, and in the place where that shadow has vanished, only a scorching emptiness will remain.